Alright, so a couple things before I start. I've probably done hundreds of top strings. If you're doing it for the first time, it'll take you a hell of a lot longer than it takes me. I've done it probably, well, like I said, hundreds of times, and it only takes me about 5 minutes to do a top string. If you have never done one before, it might take you an hour, or hopefully less, but it really takes you a lot of time your first time, obviously, because it's new to you. But if you can get everything right, it doesn't matter about the time as long as it's done right. But typically your first time is going to look really loose and inconsistent. Just keep working at it and eventually you'll get it down. But to start, what you want to do is you want to make a, I don't know what they call it, some knot. You want to make 2 loops parallel to each other, like that. And then send the other side of the string through that. And pull that tight, leave a little bit of string left, just in case the knot comes undone, which it shouldn't, but it's just a precautionary measure. And then on your mesh, well, I'm using semi-hard mesh. That's my favorite right now. Other than wax meshes, I just haven't dealt with wax meshes a lot recently. You're going to want to fold over a 9-diamond row on the top of the mesh, and you want the rough side to be where the ball is going to be. So this is the front of the head, so the rough side is going to be here. And then since I'm training it from this side, which you should be too, the flat side should be facing you. So to start, you're going to want to kind of line up that first diamond with the side of the head and figure out what hole you're going to use. So for this, because the holes are really small, probably can only fit 1 string through it, I'm going to start with this one here. Just going to pull it through so the knot's on the outside, come underneath of the mesh through the mesh, and then I'm going to come back through the top from the outside through the top hole. If you have a big enough hole to fit 2 strings through it, by all means do it, and instead of coming through the outside of the next hole, do it through the same hole. But I'm doing it because these holes are pretty small. So, and then what you're going to do is just kind of pull this really tight. You can do that by pulling on the part where the knot is, and then pulling, once that's tight, pull the end of the string through and line it up so it's not overlapping but just pulled right next to it. And there's the binding for the side. Next, you're going to come through the top of the head, through that first hole, come underneath the mesh through the rough side, and through that loop you just made. Like that. That's called an over knot. So as you pull that one tight, you're going to want to pull this first, this binding tight too. And then to pull this one tight, you're going to pull from there and pull the string through it as you're pulling it tight. And what I recommend is you try and get this knot to the left of the fold part. So there's a little bump because of the fold. You want to get to the left of that so it's consistent. And once that's tight, you're going to pull it over the side a little bit, kind of yank it. Now you're going to do what's called an under knot. So this is an over-under knot altogether. So you're going to come back through the mesh from this side, underneath through the head, and through that loop. So you're basically doing the opposite of what you did before. So you can see, pull that through, and when you do that, you want to make sure that the over-under knot is right over that bump in the mesh. And then hold that part, I don't know what to call it. Hold that part as you're pulling the string through to ensure it's nice and tight. And then, as you can see, mine didn't really go over it, or past it, kind of went over it. So I'm going to move it over a little bit to make sure that it's over the rough bump. And then, so I got it there. Pull that down, pull it to the side to make sure it's really tight. And there's your first over-under knot. You should, from the other side, this is what it should look like a little carrot. And the middle of the fold should be in between those 2 strings. Now you're just going to continue that throughout the top string. So you're going to use see, this head has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes at the top. I'm just using the 4 big ones. Almost every head will have 4 big holes, and those are the ones you're going to use regardless of how many holes it has. Some have like 9 across, some have really like only holes like this, which is dumb. but majority will have those 4 big holes, and that's what you want to use. So then you're going to skip a diamond, skip this one here, then you're going to go to that 1, 2, 3, 4th diamond. You're going to do your over under knot. So just to give you an example, pull this over as you're pulling it tight. Make sure that that bump is right next to it but not under it. Come back through the mesh, through the head and through that loop, and hold it so you're going above that bump. Pull that tight. Wiggle it around so that's right up next to the head. Check the other side. Make sure you did it right. Perfect. Now here's the important part. Everything in lacrosse stringing is symmetry. So you want to make sure that when you do this middle diamond, or the next, when you string the next, well, not the next diamond, but you know what I mean, the next part of the mesh, you want this middle diamond to be exactly centered. So first you're going to start stringing it, you're going to do your over knot, and then you're going to pull the mesh over, you're going to look from the front to see if it's centered or not. So as you can see, if it's loose, it's not centered. If you pull it over, it's just about centered. That's what you want right there. You want that to be completely centered to give your head absolute symmetry so the ball comes straight out. So once you've checked that from the other side of the head, checked it's good, you can do your under knot and finish off the over under knot. Wiggle the mesh around if you have to. Again, make sure you're not doing it over that bump. And then once you're done the knot, check it, make sure it's all centered, and we're in business. So we're just going to finish off. We'll skip that other diamond, come to this one, do the over under knot. Now, the reason I like semi-hard mesh is it's easy to maneuver and it breaks in easier than hard mesh, and it's more consistent because you don't have to change your pocket once it's broken in. And to prepare it, I always use water and conditioner, hot water and conditioner. When you use that, it's going to ensure that your pocket's as close to broken in as it can be before it actually breaks in. We're just going to make sure it's consistent as you use it. Now that we're finished, we're going to come through the outside of that 9th diamond, this piece right here with a little flappy thing on the side, and we're going to do the opposite of what we did here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come through that mesh underneath the head through that top hole, or if you have a hole that's big enough, you're going to do the same hole for the next one. Come from the outside of that hole underneath of that string that you just put through, like below it, and then come through that same hole or that next hole depending on your head. Most will be the same, but this is the Razer X. For whatever reason they don't like that. And then you're going to pull this from the outside of the head and then pull that next one through, and you're going to bind it to the side without overlapping it. And then you're going to pull that as tight as you can, make a knot, and everything in lacrosse stringing's got to be tight for the most part. So once you get that one knot, even though it should be really tight, you should be able to fit a knot underneath of it. So you're going to kind of loop the string underneath. You're going to pull from above that knot, fit it underneath. That's going to give you a real strong knot, real tight knot, and that's how you string a top string. Get a closer view just to show you the finished product. Alright. Stay tuned for the next couple of videos on how to string sidewalls, bottom string, and shooting strings.